Alfred Hitchcock's 1954 masterpiece Rear Window has often been read as a parable about cinema and the ethics of looking. James Stewart's character, L.B. Jeff Jeffries, confined to a wheelchair with a broken leg, spends his days gazing out into the courtyard of his Greenwich Village apartment, watching his neighbors go about their lives. At first, the activity is mere distraction, a way to kill time. But when Jeff suspects one of those neighbors of committing murder, the act of looking transforms into something more charged, both investigative and invasive. Traditionally, critics have explored the Rear Window through psychoanalytic frameworks, or as a commentary on cinema itself. Jeff as the spectator, the window as the screen, the neighbors as unwitting actors. But revisiting the film today, in an age defined by data extraction and constant surveillance, it also offers a remarkably prescient allegory of what political theorist Shoshana Zuboff has called surveillance capitalism. This term describes the economic logic of tech giants like Google, Meta, and Amazon, whose business models are built on turning human behavior into raw material for prediction and profit. At the heart of Rear Window lies a particular configuration, a U-shaped courtyard surrounded by apartment buildings, where every window opens onto a shared stage. From Jeff's point, this arrangement allows him to see lives simultaneously: the lonely dancer practicing her routines, the couple who sleep on the fire escape, the composer struggling with his piano, the salesman and his invalid wife. This is not unlike the structure of today's digital platforms. Facebook's newsfeed, Instagram's grid, all are architectures of visibility where strangers' lives are displayed in parallel frames. The apartment windows in Rear Window function almost like tabs on a browser. Each neighbor becomes a profile, a story, a dataset to be consumed. Here, Hitchcock captures a key dynamic of surveillance capitalism, the transformation of everyday behavior into patterns. Jeff does not simply watch his neighbors, he organizes them into narratives. Miss Torso is the archetype of the young, sexually available woman. Miss Lonely Hearts embodies solitude and despair. Like algorithms that categorize us based on online activity, Jeff assigns them roles and identities, flattening complexity into readable signals. In surveillance capitalism, Zuboff argues, the first step is behavioral surplus, the extraction of data not for immediate use, but for prediction. When Jeff watches, he is not merely enjoying a spectacle, he is anticipating outcomes, searching for anomalies, waiting for the moment when his suspicions crystallize into certainty. The act of watching becomes a proto-analytic function, the detection of patterns, the flagging of deviations, the prediction of threats. The plot of Rear Window revolves around suspicion, specifically Jeff's belief that his neighbor, Lars Thorwald, has murdered his wife. Crucially, Jeff never witnesses the crime itself. Instead, he pieces together fragments: the salesman carrying a suitcase at odd hours, the absence of the invalid wife, the strange trips in the rain. This logic mirrors the predictive operations of surveillance capitalism. Our digital overseers rarely care about singular acts in isolation. What matters are the traces, the metadata, the patterns that suggest future behavior. A like here, a purchase there, a pause on a video, each fragment feeds the algorithm's suspicion. Jeff's methods are not unlike those of data analysts. He collects evidence, cross-references observations, and seeks corroboration from others, particularly Lisa, played by Grace Kelly, and his nurse, Stella. Together, they form a kind of collective intelligence network, pooling observations and refining hypotheses. Surveillance here is not a passive watching, but active processing, driven by the hunger for certainty. This hunger is also deeply political. Surveillance capitalism thrives on asymmetries of knowledge and power. The watchers know more about the watched than the watched know about themselves. In Rear Window, Thorwald's lack of awareness, his assumption of privacy, makes him a target. The ethical tension arises precisely because he does not consent to being observed, much like how users of digital platforms often remain unaware of the depth of data collection operating in the background. One of the film's most unsettling aspects is the intimacy of what Jeff observes. He doesn't just glimpse surface behaviors, he sees loneliness, conflict, desire, despair. In one striking moment, Miss Lonelyhearts prepares to take her own life, and Jeff, helpless to intervene directly, watches with growing dread. The camera lingers on his face as he realizes that looking comes with responsibility. This maps closely into the way surveillance capitalism commodifies the intimate dimensions of human life, our late-night searches, our private messages, our browsing histories. These are not trivial data points, but reflections of our fears and desires. Companies like Google and Meta profit precisely by turning this intimacy into predictive material, a way to anticipate not only what we will buy, but how we will feel. In Rear Window, Jeff consumes the intimate dramas of his neighbors as entertainment, just as we consume reality television. But Hitchcock forces us to confront the ethical stakes of this consumption. When Miss Lonelyhearts nearly dies, it is no longer entertainment, but life and death. Similarly, when Thorwald notices Jeff watching, the dynamic shifts. The watcher becomes the watched, and surveillance becomes confrontation. What makes surveillance capitalism more than mere voyeurism is its transformation of observation into governance. For Zuboff, the true innovation of companies like Google lies not simply in collecting data, but in using it to shape and control behavior. Targeted advertising, recommendation engines, and algorithmic nudges all operate on this principle. Hitchcock dramatizes this transition when Jeff moves from passive observer to active manipulator. He doesn't just watch Thorwald, he tests him, sending Lisa into the apartment to provoke a reaction. He flashes camera bulbs to disorient him during the climactic confrontation. Observation becomes intervention, and surveillance becomes power. This shift reveals the political dimension of Hitchcock's parable. Surveillance is never neutral. It is always entangled with control. In the Cold War context of the 50s, this resonated with anxieties about state surveillance, McCarthyism, and the invasion of domestic privacy. Today, it resonates with corporate power. Tech companies not only watch us, but nudge us, shape our desires, and engineer our futures. The film also raises the question of resistance. Stella, the nurse, repeatedly scolds Jeff for his voyeurism, reminding him of the ethical line he is crossing. Lisa, meanwhile, both participates and challenges Jeff's obsession, embodying the tension between empathy and intrusion. In our own era, resistance to surveillance capitalism takes many forms. Calls for data privacy, regulation of tech monopolies, encryption, or even the conscious refusal to participate in digital platforms. Yet, the difficulty is the same as in Hitchcock's film. Observation is seductive, addictive, and often justified in the name of safety or curiosity. Jeff convinces himself he is morally justified in watching because a crime has occurred. Similarly, surveillance capitalism convinces us of its necessity by promising security, personalization, and convenience. The film ends ambiguously. Thorwald is exposed, justice is served, and Jeff even gains a kind of romantic resolution with Lisa. Yet Hitchcock leaves us uneasy. Jeff is once again immobilized, now with two broken legs, and the camera pans back across the courtyard, reminding us that the cycle of watching continues. The system of visibility remains intact, the ethical dilemma unresolved. Revisiting Rear Window through the lens of surveillance capitalism reveals Hitchcock's uncanny anticipation of our contemporary conditions. The courtyard becomes a proto-social network, the act of watching a form of data extraction. The narratives Jeff constructs a precursor to algorithmic profiling. More importantly, the film dramatizes the ethical tensions of surveillance, the seduction of looking, the asymmetry of power, the transformation of intimacy into commodity. If Hitchcock showed us the dangers of voyeurism in an analog world of windows and telephoto lenses, our digital age has amplified those dangers beyond recognition. We are all Jeff now, endlessly scrolling through feeds, categorizing strangers, consuming intimacies as entertainment. And we are also all Thorwald, objects of scrutiny in systems we cannot fully see or control. Surveillance capitalism, like Hitchcock's Courtyard, is built on visibility without consent, intimacy without reciprocity, power without transparency. To watch Rear Window today is to glimpse not just a suspense thriller, but a mirror of the political economy that governs our digital lives. Hitchcock may not have known about algorithms, data brokers, or predictive analytics, but he understood the fundamental truth that underlies them. Watching is never innocent, and the price of visibility is always power.